Writing a book can solidify your reputation, get you interviewed in media and on podcasts, generate revenues from book sales, and keep your message in front of your customers. But how on earth do you go about doing it? Well, that's the topic on today's podcast. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Content Creators Unite, the show where we discuss all things content creation. So if you want to learn how to grow your business using your blog, newsletters, books, and more, hey, you're in the right place. I'm your host, John Clements. Our guest for today's episode is Greg Bennick. So Greg is a keynote speaker and author of the recently released book, Reclaim the Moment, 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now. He's also an avid coin collector and researcher, and he likes Thai food and cats. So Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, so I am too, because first of all, we're both from Seattle, so that's a great connection. And second of all, we both love cats. So immediately you're my best friend in the world.
Fantastic. My gosh, I love it. That's great.
Yeah, so why don't you? So that's a little bit about you, but I want you to share a little bit more. So can you just give us a little bit about your background and kind of how it is to where you got to do it is what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So I started out in life performing. I was very young. I was performing when I was 13 years old. I became a juggler very early on. I learned how to juggle because I got signed up for the wrong class, a mini course after school at my school when I was in 6th grade. I wanted to take a coin collecting class. I even went out and found the person to teach it. And the school secretary, when students were signing up for these after school mini courses, signed another kid up for the coin collecting class that I had arranged, and signed me up for a juggling class. And I was heartbroken, but I went in, looked at somebody juggling, and was so amazed by their ability to keep so many things in motion at the same time. I thought, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I didn't realize then that what I was really looking at was somebody who was focusing even in the midst of chaos, which is much like what content creation is like. So over the course of my life, being a performer first, then a speaker and performer, then a speaker and an author, it's all been about focusing in the midst of a chaotic world and figuring out how to communicate clearly. So I started out in Connecticut, moved to Seattle, and went to acting school here. And then after graduating with a degree that taught me how to speak more effectively, turned that into stage presence and stage performance for corporate groups, associations, and now I do that sort of thing and trainings all over the planet.
Yeah, and you're being a little modest, because I did look into your background just a little bit, and there's more. You've done more things than we can even we'd have to have hours of just get through all of them once.
So I'll tell you the behind the scenes about that is that I made a promise to myself very early on. I was 16 years old. I was sitting in a diner in Hamden, Connecticut, with a friend of mine who was, at the time, he was 40. We were jugglers. We were both jugglers, and we were attending a juggling club in Hamden, Connecticut. There was a few others of us at the table. My friend, Tony Komasinski, now deceased, unfortunately, was 40. And he was the oldest person I had ever met in my entire life. And he said, and this isn't his quote, but he said at dinner at one point that youth is wasted on the young. Youth is wasted on the young. And I, for some reason, was struck so powerfully by that moment. And I thought to myself, I will never waste my youth. I will never waste my life. So I went out in the world and did everything as much as I could, the proverbial jumping out of planes and traveling around the world and speaking to people and this, that, and the other thing. My resume is pretty ridiculous, but it's all because of that moment when Tony said youth is wasted on the young that kickstarted me into living fully.
Oh, that is amazing. And, I think your friend stole that from It's a Wonderful Life. There's a character who says something almost the same.
Yep, he probably did. I remember hearing it and I was dumbfounded at 16. I'm sitting there just with the entire life ahead of me. We all still have our lives ahead of us. But in that moment, I was like, wow, that's something I got to remember. I cannot waste a second of this. So thank you for the compliments on a life oddly lived at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to specifically ask about your keynote speaking with this next question. What makes you excited about doing that? What do you wish everyone knew about the chances you get to address people?
There's a magic moment that happens, and it's not magic in terms of pulling a rabbit out of a hat or juggling 5 balls and everyone's amazed. There's a magic moment that happens when you communicate something clearly and the person on the receiving end not only hears it, but acknowledges what you've said, and there is a shared moment of connection. That happens during keynotes all the time. It's pure magic, and that's what I'm in it for. It's those moments of connection. You and I are going to have them, and we might be having one now in the midst of this conversation, where it goes from just superficial or surface level to dive a bit deeper. That happens in keynotes too. And I don't necessarily speak about it during the keynote, but we all know when it happens. That's the magical moment. It's not just about me saying something quote unquote brilliant and the audience goes, "You're just so wonderful." It's about a moment that happens where we have a shared experience. I love those moments.
Yeah, sounds like you're trying to recreate that moment when you when your buddy Tony told you the thing, right?
Totally.
That's the shared moment.
That was it. It was mind-boggling. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
that moment as clearly as I'm sitting here talking to you right now. I never, ever, ever forgot it. So yeah,
That's amazing. So you've gone from being a juggler to a public speaker, and you still do those things, I'm sure. But you also have recently written a book and launched a book. So my first question about that, yeah, you can show it. It's fine. So for people who are listening, we can't see that, but on the YouTube feed, they'll see it. Here's a question I have for you, though, is that's two-parter. Number one, can anyone write and launch a book? And number two, should everyone write and launch a book?
Well, you gave a list of things that content creation is and does to open the interview today. You left out one thing that writing a book, does, or the content creation does. It can drive you out of your mind. Like it can literally drive you completely insane and make you feel as though you're not grounded in reality and that you want to move to an island, shut off all your electronics and never be heard from again. I'm being realistic, not flippant. I'm being realistic because it can definitely do that. Writing a book is overwhelming, all-consuming. It is mind-boggling, mind-numbing, and it is also very fulfilling. Very fulfilling. When I sit here and I literally just picked up my book and held it up, I had a moment, as you were saying, yeah, you can pick up your book, and that I had a moment where I looked at the screen and saw my book and thought, oh my God, I wrote a book. Even though I know I wrote a book, it's still so astounding that I got through the process. Should everyone write a book? Well, if you've got a book within you and you are going to die feeling unfulfilled, not to sound dramatic, but I mean it, youth is wasted on the young. Get out there and write your book. Go for it. Like just start. And here's what you need to do that. You need to create devoted space and time in order to write. You don't need to do what I did, which is take a very unconventional approach to writing. Happy to dive in. But I set aside last year at this time, exactly at this time, from before Thanksgiving until after New Year's, I wrote for 16 to 18 hours a day, every single day. I skipped Thanksgiving, I skipped Christmas, all of it. I wrote for weeks and weeks and weeks. I shut off all my electronics. Very few people could reach me. And I consumed myself in the project completely. You don't have to do that. You can set aside an hour a day. It's going to take you much longer to write your book, but devoted time. The sense of satisfaction you'll get will be immense, especially if you really believe in what you want to write. But just know that it's going to take a lot out of you. It's going to twist and turn your brain inside and out. And at the end, you're going to have a product that you're pretty happy with. I mean, I'm extraordinarily happy with this book. Every once in a while, I think, I could have added that. But other than that, I'm really happy with it. And I would hope that anybody else would be happy with the project that you create too.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything you just described about writing a book, to me, sounds just like being a parent of a child. And so I guess that encourages me because I have two kids and it's exactly what you said, right? It's mind-bogglingly hard. It makes you want to quit sometimes, but at the end of the day, you're kind of proud of what you did.
There you go.
I feel like if I can raise a kid, maybe I can write a book too.
Oh, 100%. Oh my gosh. I mean, my friends and the people in my life who are parents describe exactly what you've just described, that sometimes they're just like, you know what, if I just left the house today and came back in 20 years, I bet this kid would be okay. And think to themselves like, there's no way I'm going to make it through the next hour, let alone the next year. But at the same time, you stay in it. And that's what writing is like. It's a process of, and this was my process, so maybe your experience will be different. It's a process of stepping into a space and you don't know exactly where you're going to end up. And it's scary and confusing and you don't know what you're doing. And as long as you keep your fingers on the keys and keep typing, you're going to end up with something. And that something might be terrible. When my book started, it was absolutely not what this book is. It was something completely different. Had I written that, it would have been terrible. And as I started drafting ideas originally, I had no idea where I was going at first. But you stay in it. You stay in it. And then through some unconventional moment or unexpected experience, you're going to have a breakthrough moment that gives you the guidance and clarity you need. And I'll tell you, for me, I was batting around ideas about what this book was going to be and what it meant and what direction it was going to take. And quite honestly, it wasn't feeling right. And I drove out one day, I got in my car, drove out to Eastern Washington, which for listeners who are not from here is, let's just call it 2 hours, 3 hours away. I turned around. I took out my iPhone, I hit record on a voice note, and I just said, okay, chapter 1. And I started talking because I speak clearly when I speak. And I started talking, and I talked all the way back to Seattle. And that became the first 16,000 words of the book, the audio note when I had it transcribed. Of course, I had to change it, adapt it. But that was a moment where there was no lying to myself in front of the keyboard. I was just being completely honest, driving and speaking from the heart to nobody other than myself. And that happened to be the moment of clarity I needed that guided the rest of the project. Things got put in perspective. There's 101 ways that you can find that clarity along the way, tricks and tools and things you can try, speaking to yourself, writing nonstop for 30 minutes at a time and not letting yourself stop, asking friends, close friends, tell me, what does this book mean to you, given how you know me? That sort of thing. There's so many things. We can go over a ton of them if you like. But finding clarity amidst the confusion is often a big challenge. But when you do, like you said, it is definitely worth it.
Yeah. And I think to your point, what you're talking about is experiential knowledge. Like you can read all the books about how to write a book and you can listen to all the podcasts about people, but until you sit down and do it, that's why I never read parenting books. Cause like, you know what? You're not parenting my kids. Like I love the theory. Great. That's awesome. But like, you just got to get in there, roll your sleeves up and do it. When it comes to, So I wanted to go back to one thing you said, because I was curious about it. So you mentioned that your approach, for at least for this book that you just wrote, was to do these 18-hour-a-day marathon sessions. Now, why did you choose that as opposed to maybe an hour a day for 6 months?
Because, okay, that's a great question. So I chose to go marathon session style because I know the way my brain works. My brain goes a million directions at once. This book, actually, is about creating space, reclaiming our sense of self, our sense of clarity, our sense of focus, our sense of direction amidst a very chaotic world. That book is a reminder to me to do that. I basically wrote the book, sure, for you and for readers, but I also wrote it for me as a reminder. If I sit down for an hour, by the end of the hour, I'm finally going to find my focus and be ready to write. And by then I will have gotten an email, the phone will ring, somebody's going to want to be in touch, direct message comes in, what have you. I'm not going to get anything done. For me, I had to shut the phone down and say, okay, I'm going in 100% so that 4 hours in, I am deep in it. And I'm imagining how this connects with that and that connects with this. And no one has distracted me along the way. I tried the approach of writing a little bit here and there. After that first Eastern Washington audio file, which, as I said, was the first, sub 20,000 words of the book, I worked on it. I added to it. I did a little more on it. I came up with the next 20,000 words. Well, by the time I got up to 40,000 words, I still wasn't in a place where I was happy with it. It was only when I took those 40,000 words and then dove in like a wild demon, for those 6.5, 7 weeks of writing all day, every day, that got crafted into something new. I think being all consumed by something is quite wonderful. Now, granted, I had the ability to do that. If you told your kids, hey, feed yourselves for the next 6 weeks, I'm going to be, in front of my keyboard, it wouldn't go very well. My process isn't the way, it's just a way. And I invite people to try it because people often don't think that's a thing. They think, it's like going to the gym. I'll go to the gym every day. I'll do a little bit each day and eventually I'll have results. Well, if you went to the gym 16 or 18 hours a day, you'd be broken. I mean, that's not a way to do that. So, it might apply to one person, might not apply to another. I would suggest give it a shot. Try it for a day and get all consumed in something for a day and see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, try a different approach. Take the gym approach, where you go to your writing a bit every day and with consistency find what works for you. I just know that what works for me is being all consumed and being able to wrap my brain around every angle of the project without distraction.
Yeah, I think that's so important what you said about find the way that works for you. So some of my background, I used to be an employee. Now I am a business owner, and making that switch from employee where you have to, ask to go to the bathroom to there are no rules. And I prefer the second one better, right? Like, yeah, write in the way that works for you. If you need to batch out stuff, then batch out stuff. If you need to do an hour a day or 15 minutes a day because you got kids and that's how much time you have, man, do that. So I love that you were able to, to just go, this works for me. I don't care if it works for anyone else. This is what I need to do to get this done.
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. I mean, my partner, Stephanie, is a journalist and writer and has written hundreds of articles for every magazine you've heard of in the world. And she's also a parent. So she's not writing hundreds of articles all day, every day. She's parenting. She's a professor. So she's professoring and doing all these different things and yet manages to get it done. If you were interviewing her right now, she certainly wouldn't say to you, oh, yeah, absolutely. I put my kids in daycare for weeks and weeks and weeks on end to write articles. No, everybody has their own version of process, and it's important to find your own way. Certainly, this is not a, do as I say and as I do. It can just simply be do as I say, find your own way, but not necessarily as I do.
Yeah. But for someone out there, it is going to be just the thing they need to hear to get started. And that's the important part, really. To go back to the beginning is just get started. Just get started.
It's essential. Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to one thing, because this actually ties in with the book you just read or you just wrote. You said I needed to get in the zone and avoid distractions because there's too many pings and buzzers and whizzes right in my life. So what are some key points that you could use, that you could tell people that would help them improve that focus and eliminate the distraction? Because for all of us content creators, no matter what you do, focus and distraction management is going to be a thing. So what would you tell someone to get better at that?
Well, what I like to talk about is a guy named Guy Debord, who wrote a book called Society of the Spectacle in the 1960s in France. And Debord was a revolutionary thinker. He was looking at society and what was wrong with it, and more importantly, our lives and what was not fulfilled in them. And Debord wrote about the spectacle. And in the 1960s, to Debord, the spectacle was the images that surround us of life, that make us feel as though we are living by way of the spectacle, when in fact, he would suggest we weren't really living. There's images of adventure all around us, and therefore we don't feel as though we need to have adventure because somebody else is doing it. Okay, we're living viscerally through their adventure. I don't need to fall in love. The magazines have images of people falling in love, and therefore, okay, I feel satisfied by that. Debord suggested that we were not living, but in fact, we're living one arm's length away from living because the spectacle was living for us. So what would Debord say about TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook, posts on X, direct messages, phone calls, text messages? Debord is probably spinning in his grave like a turbine about this. There is no way through the spectacle. The spectacle has at this point been crafted into high art, the function and form of which consumes us and churns us out completely. So my suggestion would be turn your phone off for a day. Just try it. Your fear of missing out is going to be counteracted by your fear of diving into what's important to you. And what's important to you, I would hope, is living a life that's full, living a life, period, rather than living by way of the spectacle that surrounds you. Because the spectacle is not going to write your book. The spectacle is not going to create your content. The spectacle is not going to fall in love for you, have an adventure for you, or live your life for you. It is going to distract you and consume you and leave you feeling lifeless. So I think it's essential to turn off our phones. I think it's essential to reconnect with people who are the most supportive of us, the most encouraging for us, and the most empathically, gently critical of us. I don't want somebody telling me that I'm a pile of crap. I want somebody telling me, you know what, Greg, I think you're off base here, and here's why, and here's how it can get better. I want that nurturing support. So I think that when we shut off our electronics, or at least the input mechanisms that keep the spectacle flowing into our brains and distracting us, we do a lot better for ourselves, and we do a lot better for our output, and it's integrity.
Yeah, I love that. So what I've done in my own life, just as an example of how I've applied this, is I don't necessarily shut off the phone entirely, but what I did is when I got a new phone recently, I said, all right, clean slate. Like, we're not just doing the transfer of the old phone to the new phone. What apps do I actually use and need and want on here, and which ones do I not want? And so now I have an iPhone that's a smartphone, but it has Spotify and podcast, my podcast app, and like maps. And so
Awesome.
no email, no social media, none of that crap, because I don't want it. And you know what? You start leaving your phone at home a lot more.
Yep, and it's awesome. And you know what, my friends, and this isn't to speak ill of social media, because we like social media, right? You and I connected by electronic means. Social media has its moments, certainly. But you know what's interesting about my friends who have quit social media, or deleted the apps from their phones, or have gotten rid of their phones, whatever it might be. You know what's interesting and in common amongst all of them? They're happy. It's unbelievable. They're happy, right? So I think that what you've done is important. And I actually recently started deleting selective apps on my phone that was that distract me, that I don't need, because I can set aside time to be in front of a computer and interface with those apps. And then that's devoted time that I'm putting into those apps, rather than having my life be time that is devoted to those apps.
Yeah, absolutely. Time management, attention management, like those are skills that we all need to have. And, you know, if you're creating, you're not consuming. So that's the key differentiator in my mind, is be a creator, not a consumer. It's, 15 minutes on TikTok isn't going to kill you, but like, understand the allure and make sure it's not overtaking your life.
Show me 15 minutes on TikTok sometime. Show me that. And I'm not challenging you. I'm saying, world listeners, show me the time that you were on TikTok for just 15 minutes versus the time that you said to yourself, I'm going to be on TikTok for just 15 minutes. And all of a sudden you went, oh my God, 90 minutes just went by. That's the thing. It is all consuming. And the thing is, content creation is a scary place. I mentioned it earlier. It is overwhelming because you don't know where you're going. It's like walking out in order to get to a destination without a roadmap, without an ability to know exactly where you're going. If at any point someone says, hey, come on in here and have a sandwich with me, you're going to be like, okay, great. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah, because I don't know where I'm going. Sandwich sounds really good. That sounds good. Hot soup, sandwich, fantastic conversation. And you forget the destination because you've just been distracted by the allure of the hot soup and the sandwich. That's what these distractions and the spectacle are like. Because when you step into the unknown with content creation, the only way you're going to get where you want to go is by not knowing where you're going and going anyway.
That's been my experience, 100%. Yep. So, all right, fair counterpoint. So, all right, I want to ask you your absolute favorite question, the one that your eyes lighted up before when we were talking about the planning. You're an avid coin collector and a coin researcher. So tell me about that.
Like you have no idea. Like, up until you and I started speaking today, I was looking at coin auctions, writing to people about coins, thinking about my next coin articles, and looking at the schedule for next summer, where I'm teaching a class in Colorado Springs for 2 weeks on coins and various aspects of coin collecting. It's nonstop. As soon as you and I stop speaking, I'll be back to coins for an hour before I go back to work and whatnot. I collect coins, write about coins, research coins, study them, teach about them. I'm on the board of 2 international coin organizations. It's like I have a totally different life, all focused on discs of metal. And I could talk to you for literally hours about coin collecting. But what I'll say for the moment, and I'm happy to answer any other questions, is that it's important to find something that you love, truly love, that's a counterbalance for things that are work, things that are frustrating, things that are challenging. It's important because one informs the other. When I'm finding my space in content creation, I'm finding my space that feels like coin collecting. When I'm in a conversation with you about content creation, about whatever it might be, about process, I'm always trying to find that same inspiration that I feel when I'm doing the thing that I absolutely love. So I think it's important. Find that thing. It's going to help you write your book, and it's going to help you create better content, because you're going to feel, hopefully, that same feeling that you get when you are jump roping or skydiving or whatever it is that you absolutely love to do. I think it's important to find that.
Yeah, for me, it's being in a band. I play electric guitar in a local band. We just do covers or whatever. But so I do it because, again, it's totally not related to anything else in my life, and it's just fun. And I think that's important. But I hadn't thought about what you just said, which is to connect that feeling of playing in front of people with my content creation. How do I feel about that? That's a really good tip.
I'm so glad. And I've played in bands throughout my life too. And, I can see it, right? I can see that connection, that when you're in front of the audience and you're playing and they're responding to you and there's that connection there. How is that functionally different than I'm going to write some really choice sentences that eventually get read? Someone enjoys them and writes back to me and says, "Hey, great article." It's the same animal, right? Being on stage with the band and the audience gives you feedback, writing words and a reader gives you feedback. It's the same animal. It's just slightly different. But if your feeling in writing is the same as when you're with the band, I think you're in great shape.
Nice. Yeah, great. I do have one follow-up question on the coins.
Yeah.
Is there a particular era or geographical location where you really like focus in on your coin collection?
Well, it's none of those, but yes, great question.
Okay.
And yes, I collect error coins that were misstruck, struck off center, double struck, what have you, from all eras of humanity. And I collect what are called counter stamps. In the 1850s to the end of the 1800s, merchants would stamp their coins with the name of their business. They would make their own punches and stamp the name of their coin. So if you and I were walking through Seattle and it's 1870 and we don't know where to go for a haircut, and we get a $50 in change that said Stevenson Barber 3rd Avenue, we know where to go. So I collect those pieces of historic Americana in the form of coins.
Oh, that's so cool. All right, Greg, you've dispensed so much wisdom to this point in the interview, for which I thank you immensely. It's all been kind of around content creation and that. So I want to take a step back and just say, just as two people, what's a piece of wisdom or like a life lesson you've learned in your journey? It could be work related, could be life related, anything that would just help our listeners become just, 1% better as a person tomorrow?
I would say find calm. Find calm. I mean, the world is absolutely chaotic. It doesn't matter what side of the proverbial aisle you sit on politically. It doesn't matter which network you watch for your news. It doesn't matter what your friend base is like, whether you have one friend or 1,000 friends on social media, on this format, that format, this platform, that platform. Even as I'm talking about it, I'm getting heightened. Find calm. Because when we find calm, and that doesn't have to be meditating, it doesn't have to be you sit on a mountain with a Zen master. It can simply mean find something you enjoy and do that thing and get that sense of tranquil presence that comes with that. We create space for possibility amidst that moment. And I know that in my life, when I get heightened and I think, I got to do this, 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 I got to, it's over. That's not life. We're not living. I mean, we each have a ticking clock within us and we don't know how long we have left. So use every second of that. Use every moment to your best possible advantage. And we're going to do that best, not when we're sprinting around like wild maniacs, but when we find calm for a moment to inform and allow the next moments to happen.
I love that. Great advice. Greg, thanks so much for being on the show. Hey, where can people learn more about you?
Well, they can find me at gregbennick.com, GregBennick.com. They can find me on Instagram if you want to be immersed in social media, at Greg Bennick, GregBennick. On LinkedIn, of course, same spelling of my name as well. And if you want to follow my coin Instagram account, at Mint Errors, MINTERRORS. I'll be posting new content there soon.
All right, cool. We'll make sure all those links are in the show notes as well, so you can click on them. Greg, again, thanks so much for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'd love to hear from anybody, anytime about anything we talked about in here. These kind of conversations really matter.
They do. And if you enjoyed today's discussion as a listener, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. I go out and find the best experts I can possibly find, like Greg and so many others. And so you don't want to miss any future episodes. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. And with that, I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time on the Content Creators Unite podcast.